James is having a sandwich today. I'm going to talk about Dallas movie collection. James is going to talk about JFK, on the trail of the assassins.
Yeah, it's about a different type of
Yeah. So, I'm always worried I'm going to break these little guys. The Dallas movie collection. So this has J.R. Returns, War of the Ewings, the early years, and the Return to South Fork.
So Bobby was the better looking one, the one that looks kind of friendly over there, and he's the one who. Can we give it away after all these years? He was supposed to be dead, and then he turns up.
Well, it happened with both of them, actually.
Well, JR is the one that I heard about.
Yeah. But so they both wrote fake deaths into both of the.
It's hilarious. But the one that stuck with you was Bobby, right? Did you prefer him as a character or something?
Well, no, actually, I prefer JR. He is awesome. You just hate him. He's just despicable. Sure. So without him, the show is nothing, right? But everybody loves Bobby. He's handsome. He kind of looks like maybe not quite as handsome as my Uncle Gary. He's very handsome.
Actually, your Uncle Gary's quite handsome.
Yeah. So I don't know. So anyway, I watched a lot of Dallas when I was young, as most people, apparently not James. I don't know.
Notice I'm not blinking. I never watched a full, issue or whatever of Dallas. It might have been on the background a little bit, when I was occupied with something else. There's the Brady Bunch, the biggest hit of the 70s, I think. I never saw a full show.
Amazing. I thought everybody watched
So
Dallas.
when I was taking introductory German 2022, the guy was, he was getting up there. He's even a little bit older than me, and he was trying to make it relevant. So he started talking about, is it Penelope and Ross and
the Friends gang.
And
Rachel,
all the kids were getting it, and
he
could see there was this clueless look on my face, and he said, "You don't watch Friends, do you?" I said, "Nope." No clue about any of the names. Now I kind of understand, a little bit about the names, because I try to
fill him in on popular culture.
Ross is the guy that looks like a goose to me.
Yeah,
I think. And then there's Joey, who looks like a goofball. The younger brother you kind of wish you had, but are thankful too that you never had. And then, is there a Penelope or a Phoebe?
Yeah.
Phoebe, there we go.
Yeah.
So she's the one that almost looks like a goose, a female goose. And then there's the one that is anorexic, but maybe conventionally quite good looking, dark-haired one. I've forgotten what her name is. See, I've forgotten. There's no way I would have remembered. And then there's, the one I should have remembered, the one everyone knows about, but I don't know her name. Jennifer Aniston, is that her name?
Rachel.
Yeah, see, I'd forgotten her name. But did I even get her name correct? Is it Jennifer? Okay, I at least remember that. But she's the only one I know of.
But that's your favorite name.
I like Jennifer pretty good.
Yeah.
It means white wave, or white wave, or white something or other. Take my word for it. It means white wave or white something. And it also may perhaps mean, Gwendolyn can mean white wave and white something or other, but it could also mean new moon for some reason. I think they're both Welsh. You got the Gwen, white.
Water.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, so Dallas was huge in the 80s. And
it was monstrous. I kept on hearing about it, and
I don't know how you
even remember JR. I'd forgotten who Bobby was. You were talking about Bobby the other day, and I'm going,
I remember
I thought that was JR who died.
And and stuff.
What was that?
I remembered the wives' names. And all
man,
so,
I couldn't even tell you.
And really, I mean, they were there for the look more than anything, right? But
yeah. Kind of like Bobby. I mean, he's good looking. He's dressed well, but was he a good actor? I couldn't tell you, but my suspicion is he was.
The show made it because of JR. Yeah. He was awesome.
Oh, he's got an amazing look there. He almost looks like Bill Clinton there. Anyway.
But anyway, yeah. I had never watched any of these movies.
And there were several, you were saying.
Yeah, because they came out later. Like, one of them came out in 96, 86.
Wow, that's a lot later.
98.
Yeah.
2004.
Wow, that's freaking amazing. I'd like to think they're all alive, but my suspicion is Larry Hagman is dead.
Well, he was old in
he was getting up there.
The reunion one, the Return to Southwark. But it was great to see. Honestly, my favorite ones of this collection were the early years and the Return to Southwark, which was it was just them.
South Park.
No. South Fork.
Fork. Okay, so that's their ranch, is it, or something like that?
Yeah, it's part of their land. Mm-hmm. It's the part that's really rich in oil, right? It's the part that made them huge. So anyway, it wasn't good for much of anything else, but it was. Yeah. So anyway.
There were a lot of idiots. I like that. Like I'll be talking when I'm talking about this book about H.L. Hunt and Lamar Hunt and. McGillicuddy, what was his name? Clint Murchison, and William Byrd, who owned the Texas Book Depository. He's the guy who's responsible for Lee Harvey Oswald being hired there at the last second. Anyway, all I gather oil.
But yeah, if you have watched a lot of Dallas in the 80s and somehow you didn't watch these movies like myself, because I guess I don't know why. I don't know why I didn't, but maybe I wasn't hanging around with my grandma enough then, because I was watching Dallas, because she was watching Dallas, right?
Yeah, so, it's something you could share with your grandma. Yeah. And apparently you could share Hockey Night in Canada
with your grandpa.
With your grandpa.
Exactly.
Even though I don't think you understood much of what was going on. No. You were watching Gretzky.
Not much of what was going on with Dallas either. Didn't matter.
You'd sit on the couch or... was it like an easy chair with your granddad? Or something?
No, in his recliner.
There we go.
I fit because I was just a little whip of a thing back then, right? But,
well, you could have been when Gretzky started, like only 5 years old. So,
So anyway, the early years. This was really great for me to watch because it explained a lot of why the Ewings and the... What are they called? The other family?
I couldn't tell you. Is it J.R. Ewing? Is that his name?
Yeah.
There we go. See, I kind of knew that.
I can't remember the other family's name. Yeah. Didn't really care.
They're their rivals then?
Yeah.
Gotta have rivals.
Yeah. So it explained why they were rivals, and it actually makes sense. It was great. There was only one thing that I saw wrong with the early years. Well, really a couple. There's the one issue with right at the beginning. You see the one guy has a gun and everything's going in slow motion. But for some reason, the music that the band is playing is not going in slow motion. I don't know how they screwed that up. And then later on, there's an issue with some gambling winnings going elsewhere, and somehow they still have enough money. I guess they must have gambled again, I don't know, so that they could set up start drilling and all that. Anyway.
Oh, when they were starting out?
Yeah, that didn't really make sense to me. But besides that, a whole lot of things were filled in, which was awesome. They did a good job. And they even got actors who looked like the actors that would...
In their maturity.
Yeah, in their...
Like there was a young JR.
There was, and he looked like he could be...
Bobby, there's a young... whatever this blonde was called.
So, well, no.
There was...
Probably not her, I don't... Anyway, because she was... Sue Ellen was... I think she was a Cowboys cheerleader or something like that. right?
Is that
And so
Linda
she ended
Evans or is that someone else?
I don't know.
Was Linda Evans even in that? Anyway.
So then she married JR, right? Because he's...
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like the equivalent of marrying Trump if you're a beauty queen.
Yeah.
Except you got to be a cowboy cheerleader from Texas.
Sure. So anyway, but you have the whole Romeo and Juliet story with Bobby and Pam. And
Pam.
yeah, because Pam's from the rival family, right?
Yeah.
So that's awesome. And there's a whole lot of things that they throw into this show that keeps you watching.
So almost as successful as the Twin Peaks movie. Did they have 2 Twin Peaks movies? Or were you disappointed with those movies? I kind of liked those movies. Yeah.
No, I liked honestly, as far as I prefer Twin Peaks, of course,
Who
right?
wouldn't?
But as far as movies that explain the TV series better, this Dallas, the early years, this was really good. This would beat the because it really explained things.
Sure, the whole idea of Twin Peaks is not to explain. It'll leave you more mystified.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If it got explained, you might be a little bit disappointed.
Mm-hmm. But I'll admit, I loved watching these. Yeah, they're cheesy, whatever, soap operas. Who cares?
Well,
I loved watching them.
I mean, daytime soap operas, dope operas are the real cheesy. The real cheesy things. I mean, they really got scripts for these things, from what I can tell. They had some real actors, at least the occasional one, and you get the impression maybe that they weren't winging it, or what.
No,
I don't know how
think they
soap
did a good
opera
job,
actors do it.
Yeah, I don't know how they do it either, having to memorize so many lines and then just churn the stuff out. So Dallas was better that way because I think it was only on once a week, so they didn't have to. It would be hard for a lot of the daytime soaps actors to churn that stuff. Anyway, the Return to South Fork in 2004. Now they had it. I liked the way that they had the interviews with the stars from the show done by the stars from the show. So you had like. Sue Ellen would be paired up with JR, right? And they'd be talking to each other, asking each other questions, and it was just like they were hanging out, right? And so they really scripted that well, the way that they did the interviews.
Okay.
And so that it would be more entertaining for people who liked the show to watch the show, rather than having just some interviewer there, which would have been boring. They did that well. So that's why I said again that the Return to South Fork, I like that. Out of these 4 movies, I like that one. The second best, right? The early years was better. But one thing that seemed weird is JR. He was very much in character for the Return to South Fork, and it just seemed strange. The other people, they were like, yeah, we were actors, and boy, I missed you guys, and whatever, right? But JR seemed too much in character for me, and it seemed kind of odd, right? So, but it was entertaining. I think everybody who liked Dallas, or even just watched it,
I might even find it interesting.
Would like watching those. So, there you go. Now go ahead and talk about a different side of Texas. Or Dallas.
Well, it really is Texas, but... Houston was involved. Yeah. And stuff like that. Jesus, that guy looks a bit like Donald Rumsfeld. Okay, that's the patriarch of the clan.
Oh, he was awesome. So awesome.
Anyway, so yeah, I thought I'd finish this up. So basically, Oliver Stone, directed by Oliver Stone, JFK, On the Trail of the Assassins. So this would have been put out roughly at the same time. I think it was 1988. And so this is what JFK was based on. So Jim Garrison was what do you call him? Not attorney general, but district attorney, elected, official, 3 times elected in New Orleans. And there was this weird incident that happened in 1963 Now the case, he didn't file charges until about 67. You can imagine that. But here's something. Imagine you're a district attorney, and a couple of detectives are out on the town drinking it up, and they were, believe me, at least one of them was celebrating Kennedy getting shot. And they get back to their, I guess, their offices or whatever, or something like 544 Camp Street or something like that. And Jack Martin, who's the flunky, the guy who actually does the real detective work for Guy Bannister, says to Guy Bannister, "I saw who you were working with this summer." And the main person he's talking about is Lee Harvey Oswald. Now, if someone said to me, "What? You know, like, what are you talking about?" If someone said that to Pauline, she'd go, "What? You know, like, I don't know what you're talking about." Guy Bannister pulls it. It's described as a magnum. So, and he proceeds to use the, I don't know if it's the butt of the gun or on the guy's head. Jack Martin. I guess Jack Martin ends up in hospital or something like that. Anyway, you know, like Jim Garrison kind of gets intrigued. Wouldn't you be intrigued? I mean, this is New Orleans. This is not Dallas. And Lee Harvey Oswald had been, it's documented, had been in New Orleans that summer. He'd been arrested. And that's where he signed his death warrant. Because you see, when he was arrested, of course, he'd been beaten up. He'd been handing out communist literature. And, of course, Warren Commission says, oh, you know, like he had nothing to do with Guy Bannister. Yeah. Big trouble is, he was handing out literature that had an address. You know, it was a different street, but it was the same office as 544 Camp Street. You know, he had an office compliments of Guy Bannister. And Guy Bannister was a right-winger. Lee Harvey Oswald was handing out pro-communist literature. He'd already defected to the Soviet Union and spent about 2.5 years there. And actually had picked up a wife there. And I gather the second woman he proposed marriage to. And, you know, and actually picked up a daughter. So he came back to the United States. I think his handlers were really PO'd because I'll show you a picture. I'm going through Marina and Lee, supposedly an autobiography, ghost written about Marina Oswald. And there are all sorts of pictures of Oswald in the Soviet Union. And my heavens, the people that he hung with, fine-looking, upstanding kind of people, wonderful hairstyles. One guy looked as though he could have stepped right out of the 80s or something like that. Understand, this is the 60s. Cute blonde guy, so on and so forth. Anyway, he was hanging with all sorts of people. Anyway, yeah, so Jim Garrison eventually gets filing charges against a guy called Clay Shaw. And the CIA in particular, but all sorts of the media and FBI all piled on Jim Garrison. And everyone thought, oh, you know, he's persecuting Clay Shaw. And then a guy called Dick Helms in 1979, who'd been head of the CIA from 1966 to sometime roughly 1975. Yeah, well, better than kicking the teeth. At any rate, he admitted, Richard Helms did it, and he admitted it twice, just in case there was a little bit of a...
And a very old candy.
Yeah, well, it looks interesting. Anyway, Dick Helms, just so there'd be no cause for ambiguity or anything like that. He said Clay Shaw was a member who had worked with the CIA. Okay, so Garrison got that part right. So if you want to see a portrayal of Clay Shaw, watch JFK by Oliver Stone. So here's the flunkies who made up the Warren Commission, a real whitewash group. So you've got Gerald Ford, a real flunky, a Republican from the North Michigan. You got, I think that's Hale Boggs, a Democrat, but a Dixiecrat kind of flunky. That guy's, what was his name? Richard Russell, I think. I think, again, he was a Democrat from Georgia. There's Warren, Earl Warren, head of the Warren Commission. I gather he was, you know, like, even though he was head of the Supreme Court, I think he was something of a Republican. Who is this? Cooper? I think he's a Republican from Kentucky. McCloy, who was something of a bureaucrat. Alan Dulles, got to be something like a Republican. Head of the CIA up through the Bay of Pigs, which was kind of like par for the course for the guy, which was a flunk. And then this is L. Lee Rankin. Is that R. Lee Rankin? Let me just check. J. Lee Rankin. I got that first initial. Anyway, he was kind of like the lawyer who was advising these guys, giving bad advice. These guys have gone down in history as some of the stupidest ones in the history of history. Anyway, there you got a picture. This is the only book where I've seen they actually printed their ugly mugs. Here's Guy Bannister, a nasty-looking fella. Pretty good hairline. This guy didn't have a good hairline at all. He had alopecia, and so that's a weird reddish.
Did he Jiffy marker those eyebrows on?
Yeah, well, he couldn't help. I mean, he's basically had no hair on him. And that's not fun. I've been there when I got treated with melphalan. I've gone through it twice, and it's not fun. When you're a guy, you're kind of looking at your skin going, yeah, that doesn't look quite right. Anyway, here's a Sleaze Bucket, had a lawyer who kind of helped to sink Garrison's case against Clay Shaw. This is a witness who actually was reliable. This is what they say is kind of like a Photoshop photo. They're saying that many people say that his head is kind of put on a body here. And I'm going, well, you know, like he was portraying himself as a commie. So why would he be against, you know, packing something on his haunches, as the French say? Haunch is H-A-N-C-H-E. And, you know, maybe a Mannlicher, I think it should probably be Mannlicher Kakano. Weirdly enough, I think it's, despite the first name being German, it was a Italian. Gewehr, which is German for a weapon. So here's Clay Shaw. He's a fine-looking guy, actually. I think he was kind of a bit of an AC/DC guy, which is okay, you know. Maybe a pretty good thing, but he was into young stuff, and he was into sadomasochism. Yeah. You know, when you're in young stuff, I don't care if it's heterosexual, homosexual, or every which way but loose. You don't deal with young stuff, and you don't deal with sadomasochism. So by all accounts, or at least 2/3 of the accounts, not a very nice guy. Here they are carrying. You can see where these shooters were. You see how protected it was. They're shooting over this fence. Now this is someone duplicating or trying to do their theoretically duplicating the stuff. But there's a guy, you can barely see him there. And you're looking for him, shooting over this kind of like palisade or something.
What are these flashes?
They're nasty. Here's the tramps that went running from the grassy knoll and jumped a train that was just pulling out. And they look pretty well dressed. I think they've kind of scrubbed up their collars. One guy, I think, kind of messed up his hair and stuff like that. But it looks as though he kind of had a recent haircut. So, of course, the cops, you see they were arrested, and the cops just let him loose. I don't know what all they went on to do, but probably not very good things. So there's Deputy Sheriff Roger Craig. The Warren Commission said he was in the office, and it wasn't in the office of Captain Will Fritz on the evening of the assassination. They came out and said it. Here's a picture, living proof they were wrong. And poor Roger Craig, you know, like he was going around saying it was he saw all sorts of things. And of course they're going around, he's nuts, he's crazy, and then he ends up getting killed. Oh. And they say, oh, he committed suicide. But you wouldn't believe how many people who were witnesses and things like that before or after the fact to the assassination ended up committing suicide or dying in a weird car accident, so on and so forth. So these things just don't happen in real life. Yeah. Now, Garrison has some nasty things to say about a guy called Blakely who led an investigation. It's kind of a follow-up to the Warren Commission. I think it's basically 1977, latter part of the 70s. And Blakely was saying it was a mafia plot. And he was followed up by a guy called David Scheim. This guy doesn't have a lot of good things to say about David Scheim. I've read that book twice and have reviewed
There's
it.
better water over here.
And so what he's saying ultimately is, the mafia didn't have the capability of doing the amazing cover-up. Like literally stealing JFK's body for the autopsy, according to Texas law, was supposed to have been autopsied in Texas. And the Secret Service, that's the Praetorian Guard for the president, who is now the Praetorian Guard for LBJ, just stole the body. One source says it was kind of like at gunpoint. They chucked it on a plane, Air Force One, the president's plane, and flew it to the Washington area. It was a place called, they say, one guy says it was the Walter Reed Hospital first, and then it was the ultimate autopsy was done in Bethesda, Maryland, but that's just outside. It's in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. And who could have, who could have, Connolly was the governor of Texas. And what the Secret Service did with his clothing is they washed it out right away. I've mentioned before that Newsweek got a picture of them hosing out the convertible, the Thunderbird that JFK was in. This was roughly when JFK was pronounced dead. They're just hosing it out. That's destruction of evidence. And then the ultimate losing of evidence is, guy got killed by a shot to the head. JFK did. And you'd think the brain would be the most important piece of evidence ever. It should have been put in formaldehyde or something like that. About 1972, someone checked up, so about 9 years later, it was missing. Things like that don't go missing. Newsflash. It was missed on purpose because anyone who knows anything would have known when they would have seen where the brain got contacted and where there was an exit wound. Okay, so when you get this, all comes from a movie we watched a while back, trying to exonerate the Warren Commission. Absolutely shameful. They didn't deal with it. Where's the missing brain? It's where's JR? Was he missing for a while or something like that, or is
who
he
shot
dead?
JR?
Well, yeah, who shot JR? But how did Jack Ruby get into the Dallas police headquarters? You know what they did with the basement where the exchange took place? Of it was supposed to be an exchange of, not an exchange of prisoners, but he was supposed to get into a vehicle to take him out of the Dallas police headquarters, Lee Harvey Oswald. And what they did was they flushed everyone out of the basement.